I've had many experiences, but I'll tell you one that freaked me out because I wasn't the only witness. I was about 12 years old and I was talking with my dad in his room. My mom was in the closet with the lights off, but we could clearly see her folding clothes. Well, during me and my dad's conversation, he had asked my mom something but to no reply. He eventually got to the point where he started to yell. I got up and stepped into the closet, but then I heard my mom walk into the room and ask why he was yelling her name. I looked at her and she had a towel wrapped around her. I quickly looked back into the closet and saw nothing. Absolutely nothing. This obviously creeped me and my dad out. Whatever we saw, it wasn't my mom. Whatever it was, it had her shape and even the bun. My mom always had her hair in a bun. I would have completely thought this was my imagination if it weren't for my dad also being there and seeing it too. My big brother used to have an imaginary brother. He would always play with him, but sometimes he would say, "Stop, leave me alone," or "No, I don't want to go to my room to play." My mom would ask him, "What's going on?" And he would say, "He won't leave me alone." Of course, my mom had no idea what he was talking about and thought it was just him being a kid with an imaginary friend. Well, a day after my brother's birthday, he had these balloons. Keep in mind, my brother is just a little kid and he's obviously not tall, so he couldn't reach the plates, knives, forks, etc. It was around 10 to 11 p.m., and my mom heard the balloons pop, so she went outside and my brother looked really scared, so my mom asked him, "What's happened? Did you pop the balloons?" And my brother said, freaking out, "No, it was him," pointing to his imaginary friend, that my mom obviously couldn't see. My mom saw the knife next to the balloons and immediately knew that he was too short to reach any of those things. She said, "Get out of my house," to my brother's imaginary friend. Since my mom couldn't see him, she asked my brother if he left already, and he said he had left and thanked my mom. Later, about 10 to 15 minutes later, my cousins came over and my cousin said that he saw a woman in all white with her hair in front of her face in the front door. My brother said that that was his mom. My mom started to yell for her to get out, and then she asked my brother if she was still here, and he said no. My brother is now 19 and says he still sometimes sees him in his mirror. When I was 10, me and my grandpa were driving to a ranch in Mexico. It was 3:40 in the morning and we were driving on supposedly haunted road. My grandpa had a blue Ford pickup truck. Anyways, my grandpa and I were just making conversation. He then said, "This road is haunted and a lady stands on the side of the road, asks for rides." So I got scared and started looking out the window. 40 minutes passed, the sun is still down. My grandpa kept looking at his rearview mirror. I asked him what's wrong and he replied, "Nothing." I then looked at the mirror, my heart dropped and I'm just paralyzed in fear. I saw a woman in a white dress with pitch black eyes in the back of our truck. My grandpa looked at the mirror once again and I'm guessing he saw it as well, and he slammed the brakes. We both looked at each other, we looked at the mirrors and she was gone. Me and my grandpa addressed what happened and confirmed that we both saw her. We got out of the truck and we were moments away from falling into a deep ditch off the road. If my grandpa hadn't slammed on the brakes, we could have been dead. Ever since, we never took that road. This was one of my first paranormal experiences. I was about 8 or 9, it was a summer night and I was in my room sleeping. Because it was so hot I didn't need any blankets to cover myself up. In the middle of the night I must have slipped my leg out of the bed. I woke up to something scratching my foot. I don't have any pets in my house. I looked down and saw hands under the bed. They looked really old and had really long nails like witches' hands. I started moving, blinking and stuff just to convince myself that the stuff that I was seeing is not real, but it was. I ran off and told my parents about it, but they were acting like any other parents, saying that it was just a nightmare. However, the next day I woke up, looked at my foot and saw a scratch. My bed is also like fully covered in this material and doesn't have any sharp edges or anything that I could have scratched myself on. Later in my life I've discovered that in my religion there are things called genes. There are good and bad ones. They can try to shape into humans. Basically, it was a gene that night that have scratched me. Since then, I don't sleep without being covered in blanket at night. Me and my cousin were walking at a park one late night in Mexico. A white little dog kept following us, but this dog looked a little weird. Its back was all humped, but anyways, when we were walking to our house, the dog just kept following us, and every time we turned around it gave us this creepy stare. By the time we got home we looked back and the dog wasn't there, so we just never thought of it as weird. Until, when we turned on the TV, we had a little window on our roof so we could see the sky, and when we looked up, the dog was just staring at us and started scratching at the window really aggressively. My cousin went to go get his bat as I stood there watching him scratch at the window. He looked a bit off and edgy, as if someone was in his skin. But by the time my cousin got back he was just staring. We went up, he wasn't there, except a smell like a dead body. Later, some dog that looked like the same dog from last night was found dead with its stomach cut open. Thank God we moved. This happened when I was 12, I am a female, at a country club on the April 14th. This still creeps me out just thinking about it. My mom, sister's friend and I just arrived at the country club because I wanted to practice some drills in squash. We walk into the bar area to pay for the court, and there is this lady with her son, at least I think it was her son, sitting on one of the bar stools. The woman looked about 25 to 30 years old and the son looked about 4 to 6 years old. She looked at our dog and was almost squeezing its neck. After that, she looked at my mom and said hello and then looked at me dead in the eye. She walked towards us and held out her hand. I took her hand to shake it, but she didn't move it, she just kept her hand still and wouldn't let go. She started talking to me and asking me questions, but I have no clue what she said. She was so quiet and almost like she muttered the words. The only thing I could quite make out was the word medical. Then it was almost like time stopped and all the sound disappeared around me. The only thing I could hear was her quiet muttering. I told my mom I was going to the squash courts, but as I walked a few steps out of the doorway I felt these eyes watching me. My back was facing the doorway. I turned around and saw her watching me from inside the bar. After that I didn't feel safe enough to go to the squash courts alone, so I walked back to my mom and waited for her to finish paying. Fast forward to when I'm done playing squash and I played with my friend a bit. When I finished playing with my friend she went, but forgot squash things on the court next door. When I went to my friend, we were the only ones at the squash court, but my mom was walking inside. I saw the lady standing there by the side of the stands watching her. She muttered something but we both didn't hear what. She left the squash court when my mom got there and disappeared. I walked my friend to her parent and I quickly walked back to my mom. But it's very weird because I can't get a good picture of her in my head, even though she almost stared into my soul. I just cannot remember what she looks like and I had a pain in my head. We have never seen her since and still wonder what she might have done if I left my friend by herself. At the time, I was I think 7 maybe 8 and I was hanging out with my best friend. In my house we had the most awesome basement where we would always hang out. One time me and my best friend were home alone when we were hanging out. We opened the basement door and walked down the stairs to the basement. In the past we always said we could hear weird noises from the cellar under the basement stairs. It always scared us, but we never thought anything of it. Anyway, we were just playing in the basement home alone when we heard the noise again. It sounded like a man's voice or something. We were so freaked out, especially since we were home alone. We eventually got up enough courage to open the cellar door and see if anything was there. Nothing was there, so we wiped it off and continued playing. Soon after we heard it again. Now we were really scared. I told my best friend I would get out my iPad and record, see if anything was there, you know? So I grabbed my iPad, opened the cellar door, turned on the cellar light, propped up my iPad and closed the cellar door. We were so scared we ran upstairs. We left the vid recording for about 6 minutes. We were scared, but we came back down and opened the cellar door and turned off the video. Scared out of our minds, my best friend and I sat down and watched the video. The video looked normal for about 15 seconds until you could hear us walking up the stairs, exiting the basement, when the video just went black. Completely black. The rest of the video was black all the way until you could hear us walking back down the basement stairs when the video went back to normal. It wasn't like the light went out, but something covered the camera. It was especially weird because nothing was in the way of the iPad. I'm still weirded out to this day. I was around 12 when I went on vacation to my grandparents' house. My cousins and family lived in the same block, so we would stay until late in the night, playing tips and telling scary stories. There was this one house on the block which was gray and rotting, dusty windows, everything was chained up and charred. The people there said there was an old woman with a really bad temper, but she had a really good voice. She had died in the house, it had caught fire. One night, me and my cousins and all the oldies sat down around the fire as if it were a weekend, gazing at the stars and telling jokes, when we heard singing. We vibed to it a bit until we realized there was no radio or anything on. One of the grandparents recognized the song, saying it was the song that the woman sang. Chills went down my spine. The wind picked up and blew the fire out. The children ran inside as the parents investigated the site. 10 years later, I am still scared of visiting my grandparents' house. The parents found nothing. I have asked the people around, saying that they have heard similar things.